University of Kansas. That's anywhere near Oz. Yeah. He taught at the Southwestern Missouri State University, 1980 to 82, and the Mississippi State University prior to moving to Youngstown State University in 1987. Our speaker currently holds the rank of Professor in the Department of Geography at Youngstown State University, where he also serves as the Director of the University's Honours Program. Come in everybody, take a seat. He first travelled to the Bahamian Field Station on San Salvador in 1984 as a faculty member at the Mississippi State University. In 1992, he helped engineer the development of an affiliation agreement between Youngstown State University and the Bahamian Field Station in San Salvador. Over 600 students from Youngstown State University have visited the Gerace Research Center on San Salvador. Our speaker's areas of active research and publication include San Salvador Island, the Bahamas, Caribbean tourism, historical weather and climate of the Bahamas, historical weather and climate of the Caribbean. His most recent Bahamian-themed publications include the monograph In Columbus' Footsteps, Geography of San Salvador Island, Bahamas, 2nd edition, published by Gerace Research Center. Our speaker also wrote the song Bahamas Living Jewels in 2007. The song was donated to the San Salvador Living Jewels Foundation and to the Bahamas National Trust for use in fundraising and developing environmental awareness. The song was recorded by Ira Store and the Spank Band and distributed by the Bahamas National Trust. I don't know if I should be advertising the Bahamas National Trust at the Historical Society, but here we go. He has previously published research in the Bahamas Naturalist and Journal of Science, the Bahamas Journal of Science, and has a long list of publications. Tonight's topic, In Search of San Salvador, a Cartographic Odessey, will also be published in the upcoming Journal of the Bahamas Historical Society and is a chapter in his book, In Columbus's Footsteps. I have great pleasure in introducing Dr. Ronald Shaklee. Oh, I'm also the operator of the machine.
We have technology at its finest. I want to say how pleased I am. My wife Sharon and I are both so pleased that we were invited to come down by Jim. And when I told him when I was available, he said, okay, that doesn't work. And then he said, but we have these dates. And I said, okay, well, October in the Bahamas, October in northern United States. Okay, I'm going to the Bahamas in October. So that's one of the reasons that brought me here. I have many friends, like Jim said, I've been coming down here since 1984. I fell in love with the island of San Salvador. I've also fallen in love with the other islands of the Bahamas as well. I still have that place in my heart for San Salvador. My wife Sharon is with me this evening. Jim said we did have an agreement. Actually, the family of one of our students is here tonight. Her name is Gaynell McBride, and her family has come to hear me talk. They're putting the pressure on me, so I have to. But it's also a nice time to get reacquainted with some old friends like Gail, and it's been a while. So.
Sorry,
But so I guess I should talk about my talk. This started out by accident. I was doing the book in Watlings Island, and nobody quite knew what Watlings was, who Watlings was. So I decided to go back and try to find out when the island started being named Watlings, and then it just went from there and snowballed like so much research does. So I'm not here tonight to say I have found San Salvador. Well, I have found San Salvador, but I haven't been able to prove it. So we're just going to go through the transition. So we can try that first slide. Okay, if we look at early 16th century maps of the New World, they were very coarse. You wouldn't expect anything more than that. Columbus came in 1492. There weren't too many voyages here, and when there were, people weren't looking to map the islands they were finding or the landscape they were finding. They were, looking to survive the voyage. That was probably their first priority. And then secondarily, they were here to rip off the landscape, look for the gold and the silver, utilize the human resources to help with that gold and silver. So in these early maps, as you might expect, the Bahamas are little more than ink blots. If you look at the map on the left, the Delacosa map is from 1500. A little bit better depiction there of Grand Bahama, perhaps. But there, if you look at the Peter Martyr map, which is one of the more renowned early maps of the Caribbean, the Bahamas is really just shown as a series of ink blots. So there wasn't a lot of detail, and so you really couldn't have tell where San Salvador was or where the island that Columbus would have named San Salvador was. Let's keep moving. We started to get a little more detail as the century progressed. You would expect that. But again, the Bahamas is kind of still not much more than a couple of pinpoints. I've done a lot of mapping, and sometimes you resort to that for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes you're making maps so small that you can't have any detail for the landscape you're drawing. It literally is good off map. Probably the good thing we're looking here, the well, I'm not good at German. Waldseemüller, that guy. Okay. Martin's map. Okay, it was probably, this was a map of the world. So in looking at this, the size on the actual size of this area on the map is not going to be much more than a square inch. So that lends itself to that. So let's try the next one. Okay, so there were a lot of reasons why the Bahamas archipelago remained uncharted through much of this early period. There were navigation issues. If you look at a map, the north end of San Salvador, the south end of Cat Island are on the same latitude. The early explorers, they had excellent positioning from the standpoint of latitude. So they knew they were at 24 degrees north latitude and could sail along that latitude. They didn't have good idea of what the longitude might have been until they developed clocks. In fact, there was this big competition in England to develop an accurate clock. You couldn't map longitude accurately until you developed the clock. So this may have been a problem in terms of trying to determine which island. So you may have slow down. We have lots of time. Okay. So this a mariner sailing through the region, it's possible they expected to find an island at about 24 degrees north latitude. They found an island. The rule was turn left or south because you wanted to go to Cuba or Hispaniola. So they turned left, headed south. If they hit Cat Island, they were in that tongue of the ocean between Cat Island and San Salvador, so they probably would never have seen San Salvador. If they hit San Salvador and turned left, they would have never gotten to Cat Island. So this might be a part of the problem in terms of determining why there aren't two separate islands on many of these early maps. There's just one map, one island shown. The shipping hazards, obviously the Bahama banks weren't something that were easy to go across. Even today, we see problems with ships not quite understanding that there's a piece of coral there and you're not supposed to go over top of it. Wooden ships, a little bit more hazardous than steel ships. And then the lack of interest. No agricultural resources at the time that anybody wanted to look at. No minerals, particularly gold and silver. Human resources, they took the human resources from the Bahamas to Cuba, to Hispaniola. So we were interested in the human resource, but more from from stealing kind of thing. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the navigation situation. You can see on this map. So somebody sailing into the island, say coming from this direction, could easily have hit Cat Island and not seen San Salvador on the way. Somebody coming in from this direction and then turning south is never going to get to Cat Island. So that's that issue about navigation. Okay, next. Shipping hazards. Okay, the Bahama banks sail at your own risk, kind of thing. Just especially with wooden-hulled boats, it's not a good thing to be sailing through territory you don't know. Okay, so mid-16th century, we start to see more detail. Not necessarily in the one on the left, which was done by Batista in 1540, but in 1542, one of the first comprehensive or first fairly accurate maps that is produced is one by John Ross from 1542. And we can start to see the very distinctive shapes. Grand Bahama is shown, if you look at that, I maybe should have like a big movie screen there. But look at Grand Bahama, it pretty much has the